Hey guys, welcome back. Big news coming out of the World Cup. Marx is out of the tournament. Huge blow to the Springboks. Out with a knee injury. We've just got the news this morning. He limped off yesterday apparently at the training. He pulled up some of the journos there. I spoke to them last night. Liam Delcom, my friend, my mate who we do the podcast together, to the last drop. We spoke about it as well. They didn't have an idea what it was, so it was kept very much under wraps. Went for scans last night, and the scans, of course, gave the worst diagnosis that they could, that he's got a knee injury, and it's a long-term one, which must mean there's some sort of ligament damage, and that probably means that he's out for a long time as well. So that's huge for the Springboks. Malcolm was really in exceptional form. He's sort of, between him and Bongi, it gave the Boks a sort of two-pronged approach. It gave them a real sort of firepower up front, and it was part of the entire front row sort of onslaught that they had that sort of has beaten so many teams so far. So that's a massive blow. There's also some other news that's coming out as well, which we'll talk about now, is that it looks like Eben Etzebeth is 10 to a 14-day injury now, not a 7 to a 10-day, which means he's going to be in doubt for the Island Test. So there's a lot of concern going around. But yeah, I think Malcolm was probably the worst. They didn't expect it to happen. And it's a massive blow for the Springboks. So interestingly enough, they haven't decided to bring up a replacement. You would think that Joseph Dweba would be the replacement. Now, this last week, we've seen Dion Fourie, who's going to cover this weekend against Romania, as the hooker. We've seen Marco van Staden practice as a sort of, as they say, in case of emergency, break glass hooker, which they're hoping they're not going to really need. But you know, it is a specialist position, so they're taking a risk there by putting a guy like Marco, who's an international flanker, there. I'm not saying he can't do it, and they probably could get away with it, but it certainly is a risk as well. You've got a guy like Joseph Dweba on standby back in South Africa. They obviously don't feel at this point they need to bring somebody up. I think they're sitting back and they're going to sort of assess their situation. They might bring in a back. And now, just to bring you back to what they said to us before the time, a while back, was that they would, if there was an injury in the forwards, if it was a type 5 injury, they wouldn't mess around there. They would only sort of look if there was an injury back in sort of the loose forwards, where they've got ample cover, and in the back line, and then guys like Handré Pollard and Lukhanyo would come into play. This is exactly what Jacques said at that stage, so watch his words himself, about if they do get an injury somewhere and so this comes into context obviously now.
To what extent are you bound by your 9, 10, 14 splits? In other words, if you lose a forward, could you, or do you entertain the idea of getting it back in?
Yeah, definitely. We can do that. I think if you think about the only guys that we didn't take, who's available with the backs? If you think about it, it's Herschel, it's Handré, and Lukhanyo. If you think now, out of the 42, there's 3 backs that we can select. Out of the guys that has worked with us. Yes, we can go further than that, but then it will be a guy that hasn't been part of us for a while. So obviously, if there's a forward getting injured now, and we feel we're covered in that position, let's say we lose a prop now, we won't bring it back in. It will be suicidal. We only have 5 props. If we lose a hooker now, we won't bring it back in. We only have 3 hookers. It will be suicidal. But when we lose a loose forward or we lose a lock, we might, because I think we've got 5 locks. If you think about JK, RG, we've got Marvin Ori, then we have Eben, and we've got Sous, and then you have Peter Steffens played for us lock before. Yes, you can float. We threw Dwayne in at 4 lock against France, I think, when we got all the cards. So there's options there. So if we lose a lock, we feel that there's a lot of versatility within the loose forward lock division that we might bring in. We can bring in a back. Yeah.
Probably a stupid question now. Before the injuries, how are you going to split the squad?
I'll be honest, it will probably would have been 18. We now 1913. 1914, probably 1850 if we didn't get injuries.
With that in mind, the fact that they haven't called up a replacement, they haven't called up Joseph Dweber, makes you wonder if they are looking at a backline player, if they are looking at a way of getting Andre Pollard or somebody in, and they're probably waiting just to assess what happens this weekend to see if there's any more injuries after the game against Romania. But it is certainly a concern. I think hooker and scrum half are two positions that are extremely specialised. Hooker, Deon Fourie, hasn't played international rugby. It'll be his first time he's playing at international rugby at hooker. First time since 2018 he's played hooker at all. He almost played there in the Stormers injury crisis, but he didn't. And yeah, it's a bit of a risk there, especially when you come down to the against Romania. That probably won't be such a big thing, but against some of the bigger teams in the competition, it could become rather crucial. So being rather crucial, it's going to be it's going to be a very interesting thing to see what the Boks do over the next couple of days. I think this is something that really has rocked them. I suppose it also depends what happens if Eben Etzebeth cannot play against Ireland. I think that's also going to be a bit of a worry. There's some speculation, they haven't said it officially, but the news from Liam in France was that it's definitely looking like a 7 to 10 to 10 to 14 days injury, which would put Eben in doubt for that Ireland game. Obviously, that's the big game. That's the one they want to win. It's the world number 1 against the world number 2. It's the marquee game for the pool. But this sort of leaves them in a quandary. Do they bring up another hooker? I suppose the good part about it all is that we in the European time zones, which means it's an overnight flight from South Africa. If they do have to rush somebody up, I suppose that's the way they're looking at it as well, that they can bring in somebody very quickly, and I think they want to assess their options before making that decision. It is a rather rough one to make for them. They certainly have to weigh up all their options, and if they feel they can get away with a player sort of covering at hooker, then they probably will do that. I think they want to see Deon Fourie's sort of how he does in the scrum and assess that. But once you replace a player, you can't bring him back. So it has to be a serious injury. The player can't come back later in the tournament. Once they're replaced, they're replaced. And I think that was the thinking behind the Andre Pollard, the Kanya situation before. Both of them, the situation was that both of them could be ready, but if you come into the tournament with an injury, you can't replace a guy there. They have to play in a game before they can be replaced. So, that's the situation now. Malcolm Marx is out. I think it's a massive, massive, massive injury. It shouldn't be underestimated. The Boks do have backup. Bongi becomes obviously a lot more important to them now in terms of his role. And Deon Fourie's role becomes extremely important. And if they're not going to bring up another hooker, it's going to be very interesting to see how they do. And if they do bring up somebody else, I would consider that taking a bit of a risk there. But you can't really be in this competition with just 2 hookers. And I think it's stretching it a bit to expect Marco van Staden to play hooker at international level. But stranger things have happened before. This team has gambled before. They have been unique in their approach to certain ways of approaching the game and to their selection. So I wouldn't put anything past them. But I'd expect them probably to have a look this weekend. And if they feel they do need to bring somebody up, they'll probably bring a hooker up. I'd be quite surprised. I wouldn't be totally surprised, but I'd be quite surprised if they replace a tight forward with a backline player such as Pollard. But saying that, that's the situation. That's the breaking news, guys. I'll keep you updated. If there's more that comes along, I'll let you know as well. And keep watching this channel and smash that subscribe button. And I'll have more of these videos as the World Cup goes on. We're certainly going to have an interesting couple of months. This is just week 2. Can you imagine what happens when we get to the last couple of weeks? Anyway, but thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Cheers.